Hello everyone, it's Steve with Aptera Owners Club, and today video I wanted to talk a little bit about vehicle to load, vehicle to home, and vehicle to grid. You guys know when you order your Aptera, there's 4 different battery sizes you can order. They are the 250, 400, 600, and 1000 mile range battery, which roughly correspond to 25 kilowatt hours, 40, 60, and 100 kilowatt hours. Now, these are giant heavy batteries, and some people need that kind of range, but most people uh, were thinking of getting the long ranges because they could use it for charging their home or backing up their home or giving backup power to their home during like a power outage or something. And that's something called vehicle to home. So let's talk a little bit about what those things are. Um, Vehicle to load basically means you plug in some kind of load like a circular saw or a refrigerator or hot plate or something to your car, and your car just runs it. Vehicle to home is you hook up your vehicle to your house and it just powers your house. And vehicle to grid means you hook up your vehicle to your house and your house is connected to the grid and you can feed power into the grid. For vehicle to home and vehicle to grid, you need infrastructure that supports it. So some people, I think, are under the impression that you just buy an EV and then you hook it up to your house. You just plug it into your house and it will just somehow power your house. But that's not how it works. You need 2 different things. You need a bidirectional EV charger, and you need a grid disconnect or some kind of way to communicate with the grid. All right, so let's go first with vehicle to load. So vehicle to load, a few vehicles have this now, most notably the Kia EV6 and the Ioniq 5 and the new Ioniq 6. They have vehicle to load, and it's pretty decent amount. It's 3.6 kilowatts, which is quite a bit. You can definitely power an outdoor projector, popcorn maker, hot plate, power tools, that kind of stuff. Computers, no problem. Lots of stuff. So you could theoretically take your vehicle out to the woods and watch a movie and pop up some popcorn like shown in this thing. And the way that the Kia and Hyundai vehicle to loads work is there is one form where you plug into the charging port here. And if you plug in the charging port and you open this up, there's like a little plug and you can plug in there. And there's a secondary port inside the car under the rear wheel, the rear seat, and there's a plug there. And the two combined give you 3.6 kilowatts. The Ford F-150 has 4 plugs in the bed here, and they each will put out, I think, like 2.4 kilowatts for a total of 9.6 kilowatts, so a lot. And you could basically power your entire work site off of this. You could run saws, routers, nail guns, all air compressors, all kinds of stuff off of it, which makes Ford F-150 a really good like work site truck. I think you don't have to like you could work at a work site that doesn't have power to it yet, and you don't have to cart around a noisy generator or anything. You could just run it off of your truck, which is very useful. So vehicle to load, several vehicles have it. It's very easy to do, does not require any kind of infrastructure. Your vehicle just needs to be capable of it. Most likely Aptera will have it, and they've always said that they would have vehicle to load, and it would be very useful for Aptera to have it, and be pretty disappointing if they didn't have it. It's fairly easy to implement, so I don't see any reason why they wouldn't do it since they've been saying that they are going to have it all along. So I think we can count on vehicle to load. Now, vehicle to home is a totally different thing. Um, so the only US vehicle that I'm aware of right now that has vehicle to home is the Ford F-150 Lightning. And the Ford F-150 Lightning, if you have their home integration system, then you can power your house. And they say up to 3 days, or if you just turn off all your major use sources like AC and stuff, you could power your house up to probably 10 days if you just are really skimpy with your power and just run just a refrigerator and stuff like important things. The 400-mile Aptera, which is the most commonly ordered Aptera, I believe, has a 40 kilowatt hour battery pack. Actually 43, but 40 of it is usable. Or maybe it's 43 that's usable. I don't know, but roughly 40 kilowatt hours. That would run a refrigerator for about 10 days because the refrigerator uses about 4 kilowatt hours per day. So you could run a refrigerator for 10 days if you could have a vehicle to home with the Aptera. Alternatively, if it has vehicle to load, you could just plug in the refrigerator directly to it with an extension cord if that's the only thing that you want to run. But to have whole house backup, you need to have a system that allows you to hook it up to to your home. And so this is how it would work. This is, for example, this is a grid tied solar. This is how a solar. Well, actually, let's look at this first. This is a little simpler. This is the Tesla Powerwall. And so in the case of using a vehicle to grid a home, you would basically be using your vehicle like a Tesla Powerwall. So if you have a solar system, you would have a solar inverter that goes to your main panel and powers your house. In the case of the grid going down, you would have this what they call a backup gateway, or more generically, it's an AC disconnect of some sort. And this thing would automatically disconnect you from the grid. So now your home is separated from the grid because the grid is no longer up. And then at that point, the power wall or your solar would put into your main panel and run your house. That's if you want to run your entire house. Most places would set up that you have a sub panel that has your critical loads, so things that you definitely want to keep working. Most likely, your refrigerator, your freezer, maybe some main appliances, the lights in the house, that kind of stuff. But probably not your air conditioning and things like that, because that sucks a lot of power. So you would get the critical loads in here, and then you'd have a disconnect from the rest of your main panel, which would disconnect you from the grid here. The reason that you need to have this disconnect is that if you were trying to push this power wall into to power your house and you're still connected to a down grid, your power would go into the grid. And if some power line workers were working on, well, first of all, your power would go into the grid and just kind of disappear. And secondly, if there were power workers that were working on the grid, if it was if there was a down power line they were trying to fix, not just power loss from not enough power, they could electrocute themselves from the energy that you're putting into the grid. So for safety reasons for those workers, as well as for you not wasting your energy, you need to disconnect from the grid here. So in the case of a vehicle to home, you would need to install some kind of AC disconnect, and then you would need your bidirectional charger here hooked up to your vehicle. And the vehicle has to be capable of doing this bidirectional charging. And the problem here is that this standard has not been it's not standardized. Now Ford has done it their own way. They have their own method of doing it, and you can go through Sunrun, which is their installer, and they will install this this vehicle to home system for you. But it's their own proprietary system, and it doesn't work with any other vehicle. And so Aptera has said multiple times that they're waiting for some kind of standard to be agreed upon so that they can implement it. And their inverter has the capability of doing it, so they may be able to do it retroactively, but currently there is no plans for them to have vehicle to home or vehicle to grid. And vehicle to grid is yet another level, because vehicle to grid, you would want some kind of backup gateway AC disconnect that communicates to the grid. And basically the only reason that you would want vehicle to grid is if the power company made it worth your while. Like vehicle to grid doesn't help you personally. It helps the grid. And what it helps the grid with is things like inconsistent load. And one of the major examples of inconsistent load is the duck curve, where during the day there's too much power generated, and then as the sun goes down, everyone comes home, turns on their AC and their TV, and starts cooking, and there's a massive power ramp. So if you could implement vehicle to grid, what you would do is when your car comes home, So ideally, the way that EVs could help this is that you charge the EVs during the day here when there's excess power, and then when people come home and plug in their cars, the the um, the power company could pull off your battery to help with this increased load. Now, that in and of itself is not very helpful for vehicle owners because you're cycling your battery when they pull off of this, and you're losing the lifespan of your battery. So the power company would have to make it worth your while to kind of cycle your battery here. If they had enough cars set up, they wouldn't have to pull too much, so it wouldn't cycle your battery very much, but they would need to do that. And so that is something that they want to do to help with this load leveling. And so the Department of Energy set up this memorandum of understanding. It was just earlier this year. I think it was March or April of this year. And I read through this memorandum of understanding. A bunch of players basically signed up to it. Most importantly, like Southern California Edison, Pacific Gas and Electric, San Diego Gas and Electric, Ford, GM, Lucid, Nissan, a couple other companies. And I read through this, and basically they're saying we'll work together, we'll share information, we'll try to come up with standards that make sense for everyone involved. And right now, on November 10th, 2022, General Motors and San Diego Gas and Electric, they have announced that they're starting to work on some initiatives to try to standardize these things. So these things I think are several years away still. The vehicle manufacturers are very interested in this, and the power companies are very interested in this. And I think consumers are very interested in at least vehicle to home. Many people are interested in vehicle to home. I think vehicle to grid, it just kind of depends on how much the power companies are willing to compensate you for using your batteries like that. Like if they, pay you a lot of money to be able to pull power off your battery, I think that makes sense. And if they need it just a few times a year, it's probably not a big cycling problem. Like in California, we had massive heat wave this summer, and there was like 5 or 6 days when this ramp was pretty painful. Now, we never had any brownouts or any power disruptions, but there were messages from the state that came to your cell phone asking you to like turn down your AC and not charge your car during this ramp. Now, they wanted you to charge during any of this other, there was a 4 hour time span they didn't want you charging your car, but the other, 20 hours a day, you were totally fine to charge your car. And ideally, it would help them if you charge your car during the day. So the ideal situation for them would be have your car plugged in at work or something, charging at work, and then during those maybe 5 to 6 days a year when they really need help, they could get your permission and pull off your car. And see, this is the kind of thing that they need to figure out is how are they going to communicate with your car to pull off that? And those are the standards that they need to figure out in order to do this. And that's what these companies are trying to figure out, these communication methods. And of course, you have to worry about security. You don't want people hacking into it to pull power off of your car without your knowledge or without your consent. That would be really bad. So anyways, in terms of the Aptera, I think vehicle to load like this is very, very likely to happen. They've always said that they're going to have it. So, and I've never seen any indication that they're walking back that part of it. And this would be a very useful thing for like small businesses. You could run work sites off of it. It'd be great for boondocking and for camping. And even if you don't have full vehicle to home, you could use this in an extension cord to at least power the critical things like your refrigerator and freezer so they don't, all your food doesn't go bad and things like that in a prolonged outage. And if you could at least like use it to heat, do a space heater or something like that. Anyways, lots of uses for vehicle to load, and that's very easy to implement. Vehicle to home, um, as I said, only Ford does it at the moment. Looks like GM is very interested in it, so I expect when the Silverado comes out, they will have a similar package to Ford. And at some point in the next couple of years, they're going to figure out the standardization for it. And lastly, if you look at this uh, this basically specifications paper from Tesla when they announced that they were opening the quote North American charging standard, which is the Tesla plug. In this section, they said the North American charging standard is compatible with vehicle to X, which is vehicle to load, vehicle to home, and vehicle to grid power transfer. Future versions of this technical specification will specify the functional requirements and specifications required to achieve vehicle to X power transfer. So the Tesla plug can definitely do this. No Tesla vehicles currently can do vehicle to load, vehicle to home, or vehicle to grid currently, but they should be able to. I mean, I guess Teslas do vehicle to load. There's you can put an inverter into the socket and stuff. So, but the vehicle to home and vehicle to grid, there's no Tesla that does it now. But they are fully capable of it. The plug does not impede that, and we know Aptera is using the Tesla plug, and so this should not be a problem. Once a specification does come out for vehicle to home to vehicle to grid, I expect that Aptera should be able to support it. But I just wanted to make it clear for some of our viewers who I think from their comments, it seemed like they were under the impression that they could just buy the Aptera and plug it into their house and have it back up their house. But no, you do need to buy and install, and if you're not an electrician, you probably need a professional electrician to do this, to put up some kind of AC disconnect, which is an intelligent, smart backup gateway to disconnect you from the grid when the grid goes down, and also get a bi-directional charger to to plug your vehicle into, not just any charger. It has to be a bi-directional charger, which is a totally different thing than a regular EVSE. And currently, this standard of bi-directional charging is not it's not well documented and not well accepted. So there isn't a really known standard. So that's why this whole vehicle to home standard is not very popular yet. But I think it's forthcoming. Okay, hopefully that was a little useful to somebody out there. Thanks for watching. Thanks as always to our supporting members, and have a great day, everyone.